Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Rubbin Racing Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Body Armor Sports Drinks. This summer, cool off with Body Armor Chill, a bold new way to hydrate with no artificial dyes, flavors, or sweeteners. Enjoy a new, refreshing, cooling sensation in 3 impossibly cold flavors: frozen berry, frozen cherry, and frozen orange. It's available for a limited time, so grab yours at 7-Eleven or a store near you. Got them out front here. We've been chilling all summer so far with Body Armor Sports Drink, particularly Body Armor Chill. Appreciate your support. And by Blue Chew. Guys, enter the room dick first. Blue Chew isn't just a tablet, it's a cheat code for your crotch. Stronger, harder, longer lasting, like someone gave you downstairs a pep talk and a gym membership. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. This ain't a supplement, it's an erection resurrection. Guys, this isn't just about performance, this is about legacy or third legacy. Give her group chat something to talk about. You know, when you lay it down, they're talking about how it gets up. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. Discover your options at bluechew.com, and we've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use promo code Rubbin at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head to bluechew.com for details and safety info. And big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast. All right, boys, here we go. We just came out of Chicago, heading to one of the greatest places on earth in Sonoma. How's everybody doing? Let's get a feel around the room. Spider, how's everything going after this past weekend in your new hometown of Chicago?
Yeah, fantastic. Great race this week. We had a great time with the whole week surrounding the events. Friday night we were at Barstow River North. We had a great turnout, probably close to 80 to 100 NASCAR industry drivers, spotters, whatever you want to call it, media people. So great weekend. We had Moonhead in Chicago with us, so he stayed with me. He got to see Chicago for the first time. We made some poor decisions. And when I say we, I mean mostly me, but overall a great time. And then the race on Sunday and Saturday, for that matter, I thought was awesome. So, I was interested to see on Saturday if anyone had an answer for SVG. It looked like at the beginning McDowell might had something for him. Unfortunately, his car had other ideas and kind of shit the bed. And then by the end of the race, I was interested to see if one of the Toyotas could come and get him, whether it be Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick, 2 guys that I gave out on this show to win the race. So unfortunately, just 1 or 2 positions short for those guys respectively, but just a masterclass from SVG both on Saturday and Sunday.
And we're about to have him on the show. Probably should have
That's
led
right.
with that. But Shane Van Gisbergen, I'm reluctantly going to be speaking to this asshole a little bit. No, he's the guy is fucking awesome. I feel like we witnessed history, right? The guy, I don't know, just very, very impressive. And everybody is like bending a knee to this guy, and it's absolutely well deserved. So I know I play up how much I hate the guy, and I seriously do in my heart, but holy shit, that fucking guy can drive. So without the rain, Chicago is actually a very nice place to be in for a street race. They say now that they're deciding whether or not they're going to keep going forward to it. I'm kind of agnostic. If they want to change it, that's fine with me. I guess if they want to try and run it back, that's fine with me also. But I don't know. Do you think that they should stay there, or you think that they should be done with it?
I think it's definitely a very cool venue, and it seems like that it has been successful time and time again despite what has transpired with the weather. But I just saw this report, 33% of the attendees were female, up from 29% last year. Black and Latino fans accounted for 5% and 8% of the attendees, compared to 2% and 5% the previous year. So in terms of growing a new market and getting new fans involved in the sport, I think everything is, working from that perspective. I will say if they are going to continue to do it, I would like to see them kind of revisit their infrastructure that they had built out the first 2 years. Having the concert in the park would be awesome. I didn't necessarily love the fact that it was on the start finish line this year. If you're going to really embrace the city of Chicago, I think you should do things like what we saw the first year and the second year, with the whole park kind of becoming the venue as opposed to just, a couple small pieces of it. But I think this year it kind of felt like they lightened some of the efforts, and understandably so. I mean, they spent all this money on this race the past 2 years only for bad weather to come. So I understand why there might have been a little bit of reluctance to make it the big grandiose production that we've grown familiar with. But I think maybe it is good. I feel the same way about this as I would like Bowman Gray or the Clash. Like it should be a thing that kind of travels. And after 3 years in Chicago, I think it might be time for a new venue or a new market to get some love. And that's not to say Chicago Street Race should never come back, because I think it definitely should. But I think we should explore new opportunities before we run back what we've already seen 3 times over now.
Yeah, because
Yes.
that's the point of it, is to grow a market in a place that doesn't have it.
Right.
And I think 3 years is enough to, you probably get the people that you were going to get. And then now it's probably you go somewhere else, to San Diego or something, and you do a year or two there, and then you go to the next market you want to attack. But yeah, I think that was a good bookend for Chicago of the race actually happening. They needed that to happen before they could move on. But yeah, I wouldn't hate to see it somewhere else.
Moonhead, how was your expectations versus reality in coming to Chicago for it's your first time in Chicago, I think, right?
Yeah, I loved it. Hearing and kind of seeing pictures from previous years, I agree with Spider, but I also understand why they probably didn't want to spend a shitload of money to only be rained out. But the weather was great this year. Actually, if anything, it was too hot as opposed to too much raining. But I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent. I've only got to experience it in person once, so I'm not going to be disappointed if they go back there. I'd go back, but at the same time, I do think from an overall like sports standpoint, it probably is time to find a new city and try to explore a new market for a few years. And I know there's been rumblings of San Diego and various other cities. So as long as there's a street course, I'll be happy. I've grown to really like the street racing. I didn't think I'd be a fan of it, but I think it suits NASCAR well.
Is there an argument that maybe going out on a high note is the way to go for Chicago too? Because the way that it was biblically raining made the first 2 years, I think, failures. They were able to get it off and pivot and do all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it wasn't very good for people who had gone and had nothing to do with NASCAR. And they had to make some decisions as far as cutting stuff short and all that kind of stuff that they got some flack for. So this was the exact opposite. To Moonhead's point, we had great weather, a little bit hot, and then you had this historic performance by Shane Van Gisbergen bookending the first and last race here. It seems almost perfect to mic drop and then go and try and replicate that somewhere else. So I think it's kind of cool and everything with Chicago, but it looks like we're unanimous here saying we'd rather see it move on. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Spider said, like if it came back in 5 years from now, I think everybody would be
Pumped.
super excited and be like, oh, almost have like a different memory of what Chicago was, and be like, this is where the street courses started. Like maybe we'll be like, that was the best layout of a street course of any city. And I think that would be cool, is just kind of let it go elsewhere and then bring it back for a year later down the line.
I also think it's tough with it being 4th of July weekend, 3 years straight. That's a big commitment for a lot of these race fans. It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to discount the fact of having a race, an Uber ride away or directly in your market, in your backyard, which has been awesome. But at the same time, I do think there's probably a little bit of fatigue for the diehard fans that live here, that year after year would go to that race. And kind of sacrifice their 4th of July holiday.
But that also opens up for people who don't live here to be like,
make a trip
I
out
have
of it.
4th of July plans. I'm going to Chicago.
Yeah. I think
so it works both.
It might be one of those things where, you move to San Diego or wherever else for a couple of years, and it's one of those things where we don't really realize or appreciate how great the racing here was until it's gone and at a different track, and we're trying to, replicate these efforts in a different market. Then people might be like, maybe we should have, gave Chicago more flowers than we did in real time, because it was awesome. But overall, 3 successful years from Chicago, despite some of the things that they had to work through, which I think is wildly impressive. I mean, if you told me before these efforts that we would have a brand new star in the sport that was born based off these races alone, that would be a storyline that I would have signed up for. So very cool to see it all kind of come to fruition and looking back on it now in the rearview mirror after 3 races there.
And they probably learned so much about just how to do these events.
Right. It's only going to get better, I think.
Yeah, I think, but if they were to sign up for year 4 next year, and then they have those same, hellacious rains, people will be like, why the fuck are we still doing that? You know what I mean? Like going out on a high point sometimes works out well. I will tell you, the actual race being shortened, I thought was a godsend.
Mm-hmm.
That changes the whole, the whole complexion of watching street races or road courses, because we had seen in Mexico how we're like, all right, let's get to it, whatever, let's get this thing over with. So to have that little tweak that they did there, kudos to NASCAR, because it made it a very, very enjoyable race to watch with the shortened length of it. Anybody else? I mean, so obviously SVG gets the flowers this week, and for good reason. 2016, I think Kyle Busch had swept Indy with a pole and checker in both Xfinity and Cup. So this is something that has happened before, but man, it's mighty impressive to watch firsthand. I think they also were throwing around the idea that Tony Stewart also won 3 races in his first 33 starts. So they're comparing SVG to like some of the all-time greats right now, which is awesome. But did anybody else jump out at you from this weekend as doing a pretty good job? I mean, I will start, if you guys don't mind, and say Catherine Legg finished inside the top 20. And we'll race again in Sonoma. I know that we give her, some shit and whatnot, but she survived, made it into the top 20. I think, first time since that asshole Danica had done it. So congratulations to her. And Elf Cosmetics, which I was talking to Quigs, changed the shit on their door from whatever Elf normally stands for. Like, I don't know if it stands for. Do you remember what the hell it was?
I think it's eyes, lips, face.
Yeah, same.
And they changed it to eyes, lips, fast cars. I thought that was kind of cool, little thing. I also love that Grillo's pickle thing that that Gillen was wheeling around with the OG pickle guy on it too. There's a lot of cool stuff to watch at the race. But any kind of flowers to give out to anybody else outside of SVG from this weekend?
Yeah, I have a couple. And the top one goes to Denny Hamlin, a guy who's not traditionally a street course, road course driver, finishing 4th, started dead last, and just consistently got better and better and found his way up toward the front late in this race. So I think that's an impressive drive from Denny Hamlin. Kyle Busch obviously had another great showing at this track, which seems to be kind to him. And then the other one that I would say, and I'm going to try to leave some for you guys to give, would be Austin Hill. Get a top 10. He finished 9th. So I didn't really have super big expectations. I think we spoke on it this last week, and I said I would add him to my card if it were a plate track and he was coming up for it. And I didn't really expect this kind of success from him on a road course. So credit where credit's due to Austin Hill. Good drive there. But yeah, those would be the names that come to me off the rip, would be Denny and Austin Hill. Was there anyone I missed?
I'm surprised you didn't say Ty Gibbs. You're always giving Ty his flowers.
Yeah, well, my thing is with Ty, I kind of expected him to run well.
That's true.
Him and Tyler Reddick, I expected to have big, strong weekends, and I figured if it couldn't be SVG, it would be one of those two guys, and they kind of answered and delivered. 2 guys who are typically good on this style of racing, finished 2nd and 3rd. So unfortunately, we didn't cash on that, but those guys I kind of expected to be have speed and be competitive.
Yeah. I'll double down on Kyle Busch. I think kind of just overall, I think Kyle Busch is brewing up for a win soon. I think I said a lot of the reason why he wasn't winning last season was kind of his mental state, and I feel like things are going good for him. Mm-hmm. He's got his head on his shoulders, and I think he's going to get a win soon.
I had seen somebody today saying we're living in a world where we might have seen Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski's last win in the Cup Series. It's tough to say. You know what I mean? Like watching Martin Truex, he didn't get a win in 22. and then he picked up 3 in 23, and then went winless in 24. Like, it seemed like the writing was on the wall, at least for Martin personally, when he walked away. I wonder if we're seeing that with the other two, but you're right. Like the way that Brad and Kyle lately, it seems like they still have some life left in them. Anybody jump out at you, Moon, or is it just?
Honestly, looking back at the, McDowell, obviously he's kind of low hanging fruit, but I felt like Josh Bilicki, a lot of people wrote him off on the weekend. They thought even, Corey Heim made qualifying a lot easier for Catherine Legg and Bilicki, but a lot of people thought that was going to be the car that went home, and he ran 21st. Obviously, for a lot of teams, it's not a big deal, but that car is not a 21st place car. So to survive all the madness and do that, I thought that was a really good run for him. And then Ryan Preece running 7th, I felt like that was kind of a quiet day for him. Not really somebody I think of when it comes to road courses necessarily. So those two kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah.
All right. So there's 2 villains, right, from this weekend potentially, and they're pretty familiar names. So we'll talk about Ross first. Joey went fucking bananas on the radio. Ross. So Ross gets gets shipped in one turn, and then 200 yards later, he sends Joey around, and Joey's like, "It wasn't me." I think it was Austin Cindric who originally had sent Ross. You think there's any kind of long-lasting type of thing with Ross and Joey Logano, or is it just Joey being Joey and Ross being Ross? And then the second person we'll talk about is Carson Hocevar in a second, who managed to infuriate more people every fucking weekend. Carson's getting, more and more people on the opposite side of him. So how do you guys feel about the 2 villains of this week, Ross Chastain and Carson Hocevar?
I think there's 3.
I don't know who the third.
Oh, Bubba?
Bubba, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna treat that on its own, because that was a wild fucking thing to watch. But Hocevar, I think Austin Dillon immediately said on the radio, Carson Hocevar is the biggest dumbass in the entire sport. Everybody knows it, buddy. He wiped out into 10 and just wiped out half the field after he collected Brad, Daniel, Gilliland, Riley, Will Brown, and AD. So it seemed like those 2 guys, but you're right. Bubba and Bowman are going to be a totally different conversation. We'll pick a side on that. But how do you guys feel about the two regular candidates for I don't know. Like whenever we recap, we usually shit on these guys a little bit.
It's got to be Carson. I mean, he took a lot of innocent cars out. He just got ahead of himself, spun on the track. It made for excitement and drama, and I thought it was great. It did stink to see the race red flagged, especially given that the whole forecast, and again, to Moonhead's point, the weather held up. But looking even in real time at the racetrack, you would see the forecast, and they were still predicting rain even during the race. So to see the race go into red flag, I was very worried that, that might be impacted later on by the forecast that was soon to come. Luckily, it didn't end up becoming that. So, but in terms of if we're ranking villains from this week, Hocevar has to be number 1 in my opinion, because it's not even close. The other ones, I think you can point to other things happening. It seemed like Ross and Joey got confused on who initiated the contact, and they kind of tried to work it out amongst themselves. But even so, Ross finished 10th, Logano 11th, so their day was not ruined. Whereas you look at Austin Dillon, and not that he was an overwhelming threat in this race, but him and a bunch of other cars got implicated in the Hocevar wreck. So I think it's Hocevar 1, and then I would say maybe Bubba 2. But for the most part, I think that Ross and Joey was kind of overblown. Sure, stuff happened, but at the same time, they both had reasonable finishing positions. So I wouldn't think that something is going to carry over too much from that incident. I'm more concerned to see about the other situations, if anyone has anything for Carson, and if Bubba and Bowman are truly good, which it seemed like they were after the race. It seemed like that was just an instance of hard racing. So
now that we have a couple of days behind us, though, and I know you tweeted out Team Bubba right away just to stoke the flames, which I love, Spider.
Yeah.
But is there any way to look at this, though, except to put it into Bubba's lap, that whole deal? It seemed like it was hard racing back and forth, but one guy was just, I don't know, seemed like Bubba lost his fucking mind, and he paid for it, right?
Yeah.
He had terrible point stay, and this is a guy who's so close to the bubble, basically battling out for the bracket challenge with Bowman. I don't know if that came into play with their thought process. But Bubba was the worst person on Bubba's team this weekend because he really did fuck the 23 team with those antics. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think it's just an instance of guys just leaving it all out there, going for it. And I think Bubba was, just trying to salvage his position, and unfortunately didn't respond well to a little bump from Bowman, which especially at a course. I mean, this is like the running of the bulls, where the streets are so narrow, and this kind of thing is meant to happen. To me, it's how you react when it happens. And like you said, I think Bubba kind of flipped a switch and lost his cool, and ultimately made his position in day worse than it needed to be. So, yeah, obviously I was pulling for Bubba in that head to head, and I wanted to see him win in the bracket challenge. And unfortunately, he just got in his own way and made his day worse. But like I said, I don't expect anything to carry over from this. As you stated, Large, this was a head to head driver matchup. So obviously they're going to be racing each other hard and doing whatever they can to get themselves to the win and move on. But yeah, given the way that it shook out, I don't think there will be much retaliation, or I think this storyline kind of ends here this week with what transpired. Bubba, obviously, tough finishing position. Bowman advances and got a top 10. So I think that will kind of be the end of the storyline.
What do you think, Quiggs? You think there's more juice to this?
To the Bubba Bowman one?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I think it was definitely spurred on by the fact that they were in the tournament together, and there was $1 million on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those guys probably looked at the field and were like, I could genuinely win this, because the field's pretty, like, the big names are kind of few and far between.
There's not a single race winner left in the bracket challenge.
Yeah.
That's
So,
where we're at now.
And I think it was a little bit of, like, you can only be so mad. They both equally tried to take each other out, and yeah, I don't think there'll be the next race we get retaliation, but I think it just kind of, I think there's a little bit of a, like, ongoing rivalry between those guys, and that definitely didn't help that.
Particularly in Chicago. Like, it seems like that's a place where those guys like to throw down. So I don't know. It seemed kind of nonsensical. And I know, like, Bowman was on much fresher tires. It was an inevitability that he was going to, take Bubba. And I know there was a couple of cars behind Bowman, so Bubba didn't want to just open up the floodgates and let everyone kind of rush in front of him. But still, it just seemed, I was able to watch that part on the TNT broadcast. I had gone down to the media center. They had a TV with TNT broadcast. And even though the cameras weren't able to get the actual spin of Bubba, it was a very weird cutaway. I got to see a better angle of it later on after the broadcast had ended. It was very fucking exciting to watch. Like, I was on the edge. I was like, oh shit, look at this. Oh shit. It really made, I don't know, it made that part of the race for me. Like, there was a part of the race where Chase Briscoe was kind of out there in this American flag fucking Bass Pro Shops car ahead of SVG. And I was like, fucking USA, fuck you, SVG. And then SVG took him like he was, moving backwards. So I don't know. There was a couple of really interesting and intriguing parts of that whole race. I'm probably the only person here that saw the TNT broadcast, correct? And since we were all there live.
Yeah. I don't know what feed we got. I don't know if it was the same camera angles, but different announcer, but we were watching a lot in like the little hospitality area. And they were, for a lot of like the last 15 laps, not even showing SVG. Like, it was all the other little battles that were going on, and it was great. But it was almost like I kept looking, and I was like, oh, SVG must be 8 seconds out of the field, and he was like 1.2 seconds out of Ty Gibbs. And I was like, that's, and it there really didn't seem to be a massive battle, but the way the broadcast was, it felt like SVG was already determined as the winner,
which they should have done more of probably in Mexico with this 16-second lead. But if they would have stayed on that second and a half lead between him and Gibbs or Reddick, and we got to miss some of the other antics that were going on, particularly with Bubba and Bowman, I would have been very fucking upset, to be honest with you. Moon, who are you? Team Bubba, Team Bowman?
I mean, honestly, I don't even want to take a side because it was entertaining. I understand why Bubba was doing what he was doing, and I understand why Bowman didn't take his shit for too long because he did get stuck in the wall. So I thought it was awesome. I saw the video of them kind of yapping at each other outside the track too, and it seemed like they weren't too pissed at each other. I think Bubba kind of knew he had it coming. So that said, if I had to take a side, I'd be Team Bubba just because I thought it was kind of awesome that it looked like the bracket really meant something to somebody.
Right.
I feel like it's pretty easy to forget about the bracket, especially this year with it kind of being turned upside down in the first race. So to see two guys, lay it all on the line for wherever they were running, I think they were running half decent, but to have Bubba essentially throw a whole race away over the bracket was interesting and exciting, I guess.
How do you tell Michael Jordan that? I've jeopardized my ability to race in the postseason because I raced hard for a fucking bracket challenge. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's a tough one to sell, and I don't know. I don't. Is the spotters partially their fault too? Because I just want to shit on Freddie Kraft. Is it one of those things where he should have been like, oh, what are you, what the fuck are you doing? Although they really can't see. That's the whole deal with this whole Chicago street race. One of the more frustrating things for me is that there were no vantages. I walked around just about the whole course during the race, just trying to get it. But wherever you are, you can only see a small straightaway, the beginning of one turn and the end of another. So it was so wild that some of the shit was tucked away. Before we move on and go to the bracket challenge, how do we feel about that ending? How do we feel about NASCAR purposely getting in bed with Shane Van Gisbergen and not throwing the flag to give him another win for some reason? I'm gonna ask Shane his opinion on it in a couple of minutes, but that was a hard hit. That was a hard hit into the cones. I don't know how fast he was going. Cody Ware going in turn 6, but holy shit, that looked like one of the easiest yellows to throw. In my small history of watching NASCAR. What do you guys think about the inconsistency there?
Maybe this is a cop out. Maybe I'm too much of an industry shill.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they just dropped the ball. Like they made a mistake. You know what I mean? I think maybe the information wasn't relayed to them as soon as it happened. You see, obviously, like in years past, we've seen guys go into the tires all the time. And, they try to keep it green. We saw guys spun around or like they're facing head on traffic and they keep it green and give them an opportunity to salvage their car and turn things around. But in this instance, I think that they just simply missed the contact. Sure, when, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback and see the clip of Cody Ware hitting the tire barrier at 93 miles an hour, which I think the speed was, and be like, oh my God, this is insane. Why did they not throw a yellow? But the reality of it is, Large, I go back to the point you just made. It's very hard to see every little instance on what's happening on the track from wherever you are in the track. You only get such a limited perspective on what you can actually see. So I think obviously if NASCAR saw this in real time, that clip like that's circulating on Twitter, they probably would have thrown the yellow. I think for whatever reason, there was just maybe a miscommunication or maybe late news that broke to them. And ultimately they just missed it, and mistakes happen. So I'm not overly, gonna like crucify NASCAR for this. I obviously, it's great news that Cody Ware is fine,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a gnarly hit, but I don't think like heads should be rolling either. Unfortunately, this happened, and I think that they just did what they could with when the news broke. And again, that's my opinion based on that's my only explanation. I think if they saw this in real time, of course they would have thrown the yellow. And I think that's evidenced by the way that they do things in the past, whether it be, extended red flags to make sure the field and the cars and the track is fine after a Carson Hocevar wreck, or, some of these other instances where they're a little trigger happy with throwing the yellow flag. So I think they just ultimately made a mistake with this.
That
but
doesn't scare you though. Like I think that there are a lot of impossibilities with officiating NASCAR because it's never the same race twice. But it's not an impossibility to make sure every fucking inch of that course has somebody watching on a camera to see if a driver goes
For
into
sure.
cones at night. Like,
And
you know
there
what I'm saying?
was,
Like,
I
that's
think there was an official in that,
I think so too.
like
But
somebody with the radio.
right. It just seemed very egregious. And I'm not saying that I'm not being ignorant and saying that it's because of Shane, but also there was lightning. Literally, there was lightning like 3 blocks away. Those bands were
yeah,
very close. There was on the other side of the L. There was clouds and lightning and a little bit of rain. So, you know, they're a little gun shy with that too, trying to let this thing go an extra 30 seconds just so he could get across, go white flag. But you think
It
that
felt
played
it
into it?
felt like the whole weekend. Like it felt like there was a meeting before that was like, we're gonna be pretty loose with throwing the yellows. Like if they, because there were a lot of times like me and Moonhead were like, I can't believe a yellow hasn't been thrown for this. Like they would always throw it for this. And I think in a good way of like a lot of wrecks on a street course don't need a yellow. It's a guy who's
right.
stuck there. There's a lot of time for
Yeah.
things to be done before the lap traffic comes around. And it seems like maybe there was like a meeting of like, we're not throwing yellows unless we have to. We need to keep these races moving. They've
yeah,
been dragged out too much in other years. And that may have weighed into whoever was responsible for reporting that like this needs to be a yellow needs to be thrown here. But yeah, that's just a straight up like not even worrying about what the rest of the field might do.
Yeah.
Like that's a driver safety.
yeah.
That single guy we need to stop the race, make sure he's got a safety crew, stuff like that.
I think a lot of things are true, especially what Quig said. Like they probably were reluctant to throw the yellow, especially given. And the other thing I would say is don't discount the weather. As soon as the race ended, they put on the screen like, please vacate the
Right.
the grandstands. There's lightning in the area, so simultaneously they have to worry about the hundreds of thousands of people that are in attendance or watching closely, whether they're at the track or a nearby building. From whatever perspective, but also the drivers themselves. So there might have been an initiative where it's like, hey, only throw the yellow if it's necessary. And it took them a minute to realize that how the significance of this crash. I also think it's important to acknowledge the fact that this was about as bad of an accident, a wreck that could have occurred at the Chicago street course.
Yeah.
Usually you see something like SVG or not SVG, like Bowman and Bubba, like kind of getting each other into the wall, which will kill your speed. But at the end of the day, you're not like susceptible to massive injury. Unfortunately, this was a freak thing where either his brakes weren't working or his pedal was stuck and he just hit the tire barrier. Like, I don't think anyone was expecting that to occur. And I think maybe that's reason why it took him so long to acknowledge what happened, is because they were worried about not only the fans' safety, but also the driver's safety. And they wanted to make sure, hey, this warrants a yellow before they ultimately responded.
And different angles of that look like a different severity of wreck.
Yeah,
Oh,
for
really?
sure.
Because I only saw the first one where it looked like he was like absolutely dive bombed into it. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I didn't realize
the
that.
one that was filmed by somebody on their cell phone. Yeah, like that looks
yeah. And then the
insanely bad.
Yeah.
And then the broadcast version or the in-car cam looks a little less worse, but the phone one is probably how the officials saw it or whoever's monitoring it, so it probably should have been an easier decision than it was.
Wasn't he on his radio right away? Like Cody Ware was like, somebody get me out of here or something. There was some
I think I heard the radio and they asked him if he was okay, and there was like enough of a gap before he replied, and that was concerning. So like,
yeah,
that should have been enough to throw the yellow. But again, I don't know what was going through NASCAR's thought process there.
I'm being hypocritical too, saying they should have thrown it quicker, because when they didn't throw it for Ricky, and Ricky was managed to refire his engine, then back up out that exit, so there wasn't any yellow. I was like, fuck yeah, go USA. Like, I thought that was pretty good. I know Josh Berry was kind of stranded there, maybe driver's side facing traffic too for a while, which was for like a minute and a half. It's fucking crazy. Moonhead, what did you see with this? It just seemed
The Barry one, me and Quiggs in real time could not. We were in disbelief with that one because he was literally sitting. He had to drive backwards at one point, and then he was sitting driver's side to traffic. That one, though, I get that one to an extent. It was a low speed part of the racetrack. He didn't hit very hard. He was trying to drive away. The Cody Ware one to me is inexcusable, especially, I mean, NASCAR will fine drivers if they don't wear the right underwear, and they say it's for safety. And then to leave somebody over there for whatever it was, 34 seconds or whatever they said after a hit like that, like I think they should clean house or severely reevaluate how they're going about race control at these events, because that could have been bad. You know, if somebody else comes wheel hopping in there and hits Cody after he's already, you know, dazed and confused sitting there under a tire barrier, that could be a really bad situation. So I get the rush to try to get the event in because of rain and not wanting all the chaos that was probably going to ensue if they did green white checkers, even if the rain did hold off. But you can't jeopardize a person's safety, in my opinion, right there, because that would be really, really bad for the sport as a whole. You know, if somebody were to get injured because they held a caution flag.
And then, you know, Reddick would have fucking donkey punched SVG on the restart. We wouldn't be having this historic fucking weekend. So the bracket challenge, the update, we're at the Elite 8 now. And I said earlier, no race winners left in the bracket after John Hunter Nemechek edged out Chase Elliott. So going into this next round in Sonoma, we have a couple of matchups. There's 4 of them, and there's 4 of us. If you guys want to grab one, it's Ty Dillon versus Alex Bowman, then John Hunter versus Eric Jones in a legacy versus legacy matchup. Ryan Preece versus Tyler Reddick, and then Ty Gibbs, who just beat Almendinger, versus Zane Smith going into Sonoma. Any of those matchups jump out at you guys? I mean, I think I'm on the Ty Dillon train, hoping that this thing kind of goes, because he gets out of his car and, you know, this one, he's like, once I found out it was a basketball city, there's no way I'm losing head to head to Brad, going back to that terrible fucking basketball video of Brad Kay. So I think this has been great for Ty Dillon's brand. So I can't help, without any kind of shade towards Bowman, I can't help but be rooting for Ty Dillon. But does anything else jump out at you at those matchups? And again, you can find these matchups on DraftKings, and you can bet the matchups within the bracket challenge if you don't have a bracket or anything like that. So it's John Hunter, Eric Jones, Preece Reddick, and Gibbs versus Zane Smith.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, the one that pops out is and odds-wise via DraftKings, the closest in odds is the Legacy Motor Club matchup, which is obviously going to be intriguing. One of those guys is guaranteed to move on, which should be cool to watch. I'd probably take Eric Jones. In his 3 races here, he's got an average finishing position of 24.3, whereas John Hunter is a 29 average finishing position. But that's the one I'm most intrigued to watch. 2 guys who are not typically superstars at this kind of track, and it should be interesting to see what happens between them. But I also think don't discount the Reddick Preece one. I know Reddick is an overwhelming favorite. DraftKings has him minus 240 over Preece, who's plus 175. But Preece just finished, what was it, 9th? We just gave him his flowers for finishing 9th on a street course. So not really the expected finish that we saw. And in his 2 races here, he's finished in the top 20 both 2 times. And again, obviously Tyler Reddick is a good road course driver. But if you look here, in his 3 races, he only has 1 top 20 finish. It ended up being a top 10, but his average finishing position is 25.3, whereas Ryan Preece is a 15.5. So that might be an opportunity to make some money. And I almost am intrigued to take all of the underdogs this week. It seems like Ty Dillon is a guy that just keeps getting it done somehow. So I'm going to be rooting for him over Bowman. Zane Smith over Ty Gibbs. You look, Ty Gibbs numbers, he's average finishing position here at 27.5, whereas Zane Smith is a 25. So again, slight edge, and obviously on paper, Ty Gibbs is the better driver on this kind of track. But if you're looking from a data perspective, some of these underdogs have intriguing odds, and they certainly become a little bit more, palatable. So honestly, I'm gonna give me every upset this week. I'm taking Eric Jones. I'm taking Priest. I'm taking Ty Dillon. I'm taking Zane Smith. I might parlay those. I'm curious as to what that would look like.
I mean, that would be the strategy.
That's
All the underdogs have been winning.
60 to plus 6,000 if I parlayed them.
I think if Ty Dillon makes it one more round, like just gets to Dover, where I don't even know who he'd then probably have the winner of the Legacy guys.
He'd have the Legacy, yeah.
And then if he can get by that, he goes into Indy against, if you look at the top of that thing, maybe versus Reddick. I mean, that's the story of this bracket challenge this year, right? I mean,
yeah.
Ty Dillon, the unexpected story of this bracket challenge. It's tough not to fucking to root for him. I'd seen this headline. I just wanted your guys' take before we move on. 25-year-old Carson Ware, son of Rick Ware, and he's Cody Ware's brother, is removing his face tattoos. That fucking like a weird thing to just kind of pop up on my timeline. But I'd seen it. He has this quote, he's 25 years old. After some time thinking, I've decided to remove my neck and face tattoos. My first appointment is next Tuesday. For those who never judged me because of them, you have no idea what that meant. For those that did, I can't say I blame you or you don't understand. So Cody Ware's brother, Rick Ware's son, Carson Ware, he doesn't have a lot of like prison shit or anything. You know, it's like a very tasteful swastika between his eyes or something. It's something a lot more benign than that, and he's having them removed. Is that the way we're going? Or it seemed like it would go the opposite way, like tattooed face guys might be getting more stuff. What do you think about this? It's totally random. I have no idea. Yeah, I brought up a picture of the kid. Seems like just a regular looking kid. It's not like a gigantic Maori tribal thing that fucking Tyson has. It's a couple of face tattoos. You agree with this shit or no?
I mean, I think it's the right move. I don't mean to sound too critical, and maybe I'm one of those people that's passing judgment, as he mentioned in his tweet, but I think, and again, I'm not trying to sound like a hater. Mm-hmm. I think both the Ware brothers have had their fair share of controversy on and off the track. And it's good to see them kind of trying to make strives to be better. Not saying that, face tats make someone a bad person, but I like to see both of them take their racing career serious, because I think I'd rather see that than some of the other headlines that go around. So whatever they can do, it seems like they have a good opportunity. Rick Ware seems like he's in a position where, things can go a lot of different ways, and they can seemingly have success and dictate their own future. And I would love to see both of his kids become, part of that and become instrumental in those efforts. So whatever they can do to stay more focused on racing and just keep doing their thing. Cody Ware was running pretty good, relatively speaking, up until he had that bad wreck. So, yeah, I'm a fan of this, and whatever they can do to just keep the show on the track, I think would be great.
As a guy with a bunch of tattoos, Quiggs, how do you feel about this?
I think it's a good decision just from the standpoint of the face tattoo is kind of lame.
Okay.
I think it's like a play on the rappers, like teardrops when they kill someone, but it's two hearts.
Well, he did try to have a rap career.
And I also take this back if it's like somebody who died and I don't think
it's his grandma.
Oh, is it?
Then is it a little fucked up to get him removed?
Well,
yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying.
I talked to him the other day. I like Carson. I've known Carson for a little bit, and I was honestly disappointed because to me, like, you just like, that's how you point out Carson Ware. He's like the only guy in the NASCAR garage with face tattoos. But talking to him, it seems like it's his choice, and what he's kind of explained on Twitter. Like, I don't think it's that he hates them necessarily. I think he's just looking at it from a standpoint of advancing his racing career. And because when you have to dabble in corporate America, you look at his brother's sponsored by Arby's this past weekend. I don't know if Arby's is going to be as quick to sponsor somebody, with tattoos on their face, even if it is a sentimental thing. So I think it's more of a career move and trying to put the past behind him as opposed to just
character
wanting to
development.
Yeah.
Which I'm
Didn't
here
Pete
for.
Davidson just do this, right?
Yep.
He just took all his off now, right? Because he wants to be his
I don't know if he's actually done. I think he had like a shit ton. It's probably going to take him an extended period of time, but I think he's definitely in the process. And I know it's shitty. Like, we work at a job here where like you can have unlimited tattoos. The typical corporate America shit doesn't matter. You can have, immense facial hair or long hair, whatever. There's not really rules. Now, that being said, and I don't agree with this either, strictly from like a brand safety, marketing, sponsorship angle, I think it's the right move. And again, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm not going to not sponsor someone because they have a certain tattoo, but I definitely kind of see why people might be skeptical and why the thought process behind this decision.
Spider, you have any tattoos?
I don't. I'm actually kind of anti-tattoo. Anytime I buy something large, I instantly regret it. I got buyer's remorse immediately. I can't imagine putting a permanent tattoo on my body. I'd probably be in like the next day, be like, why did I do this? This is dumb. I also think it's kind of one of those things you got to go all in. Like, if I'm going to get a tattoo, I'm going to get sleeves and it's going to be significant. I'm going to look like Chris Daughtry or something. But
You should.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not a tattoo guy. I'm not a tattoo hater. If someone wants to get tattoos, by all means. All I'm saying is I see the logic in his decision with this one.
I worked with a guy, and we're in suits every day, and I worked with him for months, and before he had rolled up his sleeves, and I'd seen that he sort of had those Yakuza tattoos. You can't see them from, not necessarily Japanese, although no, he did have the koi and shit, but you couldn't see them when he had his shirt buttoned up. But once he was to take his shirt off or roll up his sleeves or something, he was all fucking ink. And back then it was kind of shocking. I didn't think it was as shocking nowadays, even with those little adorable ones that Carson has. But yeah, I'm respect if that's what he thinks is going to drive the bottom line. His dad just sold something for over $100 million. So maybe his pop's like, if you want a piece of this, maybe take those fucking tattoos off.
I heard it was $150 million, by the way.
You get that bag.
That's a Spidey scoop from this weekend.
There it is.
I can't reveal my sources, but the number that Rick Ware got is allegedly $150 million.
Oof, I like that. All right, so let's put a bow on this weekend by talking to the guy who dominated Chicago, Shane Van Gisbergen. So 3 Ride with SVG is brought to you by Portillo's. Celebrate National Hot Dog Day at Portillo's. For 1 week only, Portillo's Perks members can score a $1 hot dog with any $5 purchase, July 14th through the 20th. That's right, $1 dog to celebrate Chicago's favorite food. Not a Perks member? Join now for free at Portillos.com to start earning offers. This offer is available in Portillo's restaurants and at Portillos.com, but only for a limited time. Terms apply. Limit 1 per Perks member. And with that, let's talk to SPG. All right, guys. So as promised, we have a guy who just basically put Chicago over his knee and gave it a good talking to. It's Shane Van Gisbergen, driver of the number 88 Chevrolet for Trackhouse Racing. As you guys know, if you listen to the show, I hate Shane Van Gisbergen. I hate when somebody is taller than me, more handsome than me, and better than me at anything. So imagine how all these guys at their haulers see this guy cut by from New Zealand and just absolutely fucking eat their lunch whenever they're anywhere near a road course. It's got to be frustrating. Shane, welcome on to the show. How you doing? How you feeling? You got to still be on a high after this past weekend, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's been a cool week. Been busy, but yeah, cool atmosphere at the shop here, seeing everyone and seeing how much it means. We had a cool photo with the car yesterday. The car stayed together for an extra day or two and sat in the shop with the trophy, and yeah, just awesome to soak in our achievements, I guess, and then try and do it again this week.
I'm going to reiterate that what if I think maybe Gluck had put out there earlier this week. If you don't come in that first year at that inaugural street race, and all of a sudden this kid from New Zealand, I say kid, and just absolutely, bodies that race too, then maybe this wouldn't have continued, right? Is that safe to assume that if you didn't have all that great success on that first street course, that we might not be talking today at all?
Probably correct, yeah, 100%. It's that race kicked off a sort of whirlwind events in 23, and a couple of months, 3 months later, I was getting ready to move here to the States. So yeah, it's been huge. It's been crazy change of life since then, and yeah, this weekend just gone was amazing. Great to replicate that success, I guess, and such a cool feeling.
Since 2023, you've seemingly made these road and street courses look super easy to race on, which is wildly impressive. But I'm curious to know, has there been one that's been a harder test than others? What would you say the hardest street or road course in NASCAR that's tested you thus far has been?
Uh, Maybe Coda. Coda we haven't been that fast or that good at, but also Watkins Glen eats me. We were the fastest car there last year, and on the last lap I made an error, and Chris Buescher got past me. So I still am angry at myself for making that mistake. But we were the fastest car on that day. But I guess Coda is where we haven't been fast. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that's been really admirable is to see you not only, dominate these road courses, but also try to cut your teeth on some of the ovals. Has there been one oval that you've just had, bad luck with and that you think is the hardest oval that NASCAR offers on their schedule?
Oh man, they're all tough in their own right. The super speedways are crazy. I haven't got a good result there yet. I always end up putting myself in a bad spot or getting involved in a crash. But the super speedway stuff is just like nothing. Nowhere else in the world can you race like that, So
Yeah.
I still have a lot to learn there.
How about on the flip side, if there's one oval you think that you might be able to turn some heads at and provide a better result than the public expects from you, what oval course would you say is would be that opportunity?
Yeah, I think the short tracks we're starting to get better at, and like the medium stuff, Nashville we were decent speed, Darlington, and then Martinsville we were actually pretty quick, but we had a bit of bad luck and I mucked up qualifying. So, but our speed there was actually all right. So those short tracks and proper braking, down changing, I'm sort of not too bad at those. So I'm looking forward to going back then again soon.
Shane, let me ask you something. Then going back to your strong points, what's the difference? We actually heard in the broadcast this week a little bit from Ty Gibbs's booth saying he's breaking a little bit later into the. They're all trying to. I got the feeling that these drivers would like to pool their money together, kidnap you, and then cut you open just to see what's inside of you that makes you different on these road courses. Is it just something innate? Is it just because you've done it for such a long time in your other life, outside of Cup Series racing? Or, I mean, I don't know it. Without giving away the keys to the shop, why are you 16 seconds better than everybody in Mexico? Why are you dominating the polls and the races for the first time since 2016, up here in Chicago? What's the difference with Shane Van Gisbergen?
That's just my background. Like I've come from road racing, you say here, and that's all I've ever done all my life, and these guys, most of them are the opposite. They've all done the oval side. So, we're having conversations they're having about me on the street tracks, I have about them on the ovals. It's the same sort of stuff. It just takes time to figure out. And most of those guys, 2023, they hadn't done a street course before, So already after 3 years, they've definitely gotten a lot better at it and a bit closer. But that's why ovals are going to take me time to figure out. It's just the opposite, really.
What's the time frame that maybe Justin Marks and those guys have for you to now elevate yourself to that next strata on the ovals? Because you have a little bit of experience now on your resume, through Xfinity and obviously in this season with Cup. Do you have like a feel saying, hey, listen, if I can continue to grow at this rate, I think by 2026, I'm going to be dangerous wherever I turn on my engine?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a time frame or whatever,
You
but
know what I
there's
mean?
certainly a rate of progression that we're on that feels quite steep. I feel like we're learning something every week. We're getting better and better, and it doesn't feel forced. Like I feel like we're really making gains, getting closer to our teammates, and also our cars are getting better too. So, yeah, I really hope we're getting a lot more competitive by the playoffs, and we can just keep building. But it's going to take time, and Justin's been great, really patient, and so is everyone here at Trackhouse, very supportive and helping me with whatever I need in the car and my driving.
You mentioned getting the reps in and learning. One of the things that I thought was interesting was last year you spent in Xfinity trying to get some more experience on oval racing. How much do you think that's helped you? And do you plan to do any more of that in the future?
Yeah, it's a hard one. The cars are just so different in the way that they work. So I really had a nice year last year learning the tracks, the places, but yeah, I'm sort of threw most of that in the bin. Like the cars are so different, the way they drive and the way they race. So I felt like I was starting again at a lot of tracks. Um, but yeah, I think I'm glad I did a year of learning before jumping straight into the deep end. But it was yeah, they're so different.
You say they're so different, yet you've come from supercars and seemingly made it look easy in the NASCAR Cup Series cars. What would you point to that as the explanation for that success?
Well, a race car is a race car, right? And you do whatever you can to try to get the most out of it. And on a street circuit, they are very different the way they drive and the way you set them up. But yeah, you still the way to achieve speed, I guess, is the same. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just drive flat out, try and be as close to the walls as you can, and every time you hit them, it's got to be a touch instead of a hit. I hit the wall or touch the wall so many times on the weekend, but you kind of use that to learn where the limits are and kind of feel everything.
Just one of the recent headlines is the shakeup at Trackhouse with the departure of Daniel Suarez after the season. Daniel's a good friend of the show. I got to be honest, walking around Mexico City, Daniel's a good friend to everybody. Like, I don't know anybody out there who has a bad thing to say about the Amigo. So how was it working with Daniel for the time that you had together? Was he somewhat of a mentor as far as being the guy who knows what it's like to come from an international circuit there? Just give me your thoughts on Daniel.
Yeah, I've loved being a teammate with Daniel, and whenever he asks me something on a road course or I ask him something on oval, it's awesome. Communication's open. He's a great teammate and good to race with on track. So yeah, hopefully I'm looking forward to finishing out the year with him and keep learning off him. Because he's a great driver. He's been through what I'm going through. And that Saturday at Mexico was one of the coolest.
That was awesome.
It was the coolest racing experience I've had that doesn't involve me. It was epic to watch. Watch him
awesome.
and see how the crowd reacted when he took the lead, and it was one of the coolest races I've watched.
Do you think we should get a home track for you, maybe New Zealand or someplace that you formerly raced at? And what would the crowd response to seeing SVG race at home be?
Well, New Zealanders are a bit more reserved than Mexicans, but I'd love to race at home. We got some great tracks there, and whenever V8 Supercars went from Australia to New Zealand, there was always good New Zealand drivers, and they'd support us. So, yeah, I would love to race at home. That would be great.
I would be so against giving him any unfair advantage, Spider. I would shave my head, go on a hunger strike, whatever the fuck we need. Can we stop giving this guy the keys to the kingdom? So you talk about Daniel and how he was very, very generous with helping you out on the ovals and vice versa. If you were to have like a young kid, let's say, I don't know, Connor Zilich come in, how do you feel that how did that relationship will be? Because you've only been in the Cup Series for a year, right? You're a rookie, but 36-year-old guy who's been a stud on everything he touched. Does that automatically throw you into the mentor type role with a young kid like that? Because God knows Ross is doing his own thing.
Yeah, well, even when Connor comes and races the 87 car and does the one-off races, we still bounce ideas off each other and been getting along really well. So he's a cool kid to have around, and yeah, see where he ends up. But yeah, working with him so far has been a lot of fun, and I really enjoy that.
Talk to me about your goals for the rest of the season. Obviously now 2 wins on road courses, street course, whatever you want to call it. That you punch yourself into the playoffs, as did your teammate Ross. Do you think you can make a deep run in the playoffs? What is the ceiling for this team? Or are you more focused on just trying to succeed at tracks that are ideal for you and continue to win road courses, i.e. Sonoma this weekend?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't try not to get too deep about that shit, but I just got to keep getting better every week. It's been really fun working hard and trying to understand ovals, and yeah, if we keep improving, who knows where we end up in the playoffs, but we definitely have to keep improving. So we're just focused on that, I guess, and the road courses are a nice little bonus for us.
Absolutely. One thing, sorry, Larch. The one thing I was encouraged to watch, or I guess was interesting to watch, was it seemed like Michael McDowell at Chicago was the only car that really had an answer for you. And unfortunately, his car, suffered some difficulties. Were you concerned about him at any point? And what do you think the race would have looked like should his car have been, operational the entire time?
Yeah, who knows? But I don't think he was that strong. At the end of the race, the Toyotas were really strong. Chase Briscoe, Ty Gibbs, and
Tyler Reddick.
Reddick
Yeah.
was really strong. So they were probably people I was more worried about. They seemed to be driving really well. And at the end, Tyler was coming with some fresher tires. So yeah, if the yellow come out or he had got through the traffic better, he was probably the one I was most worried about. So glad I didn't have to race him. He's a great racer, and we've had some good battles. But luckily, we didn't have to find out.
So with the big controversy about that flag not being thrown in time, how do you see it? What's Shane Van Gisbergen's call on that when Cody had gone into the barrier at 100 miles an hour? I realized that NASCAR wants to see if drivers can get out of their own way and all that stuff. And I know that there was kind of a consistent delay throughout the day. But how did you feel about that call to not throw the yellow?
Well, obviously, I was on the good side of it.
Yeah,
but
100%. Yeah.
It is worrying that they didn't see how hard that car went into the fence, and that there's no. I'm pretty sure in Australia there's like G meters in the car, and when a car crashed, the officials would see that it had a huge impact, so you'd be able to do that. So hopefully something like that is implemented, that there's a trigger, that there's been a big crash, and to throw the yellow straight away. But I'm sure that they're looking into that stuff straight away, and that seems to happen here when something bad happens. There's an immediate fix, or they certainly look into it and try and start fixing things. So yeah, I really think that end of that race probably could have been managed a little better, but in my position, I guess I couldn't complain at the time. But hindsight, that was crazy crash. That crowd cam view was
insane.
It was scary to watch.
Yeah. Let's say hypothetically there was a yellow thrown there and a restart came out. What would your confidence level going into that final restart be? I know you mentioned you were concerned about the Toyotas and Reddick having fresh tires. What would your confidence level be should there have been a final restart there at the end?
Well, I still had a really fast car, and I had a bit of speed left in reserve, but it's pretty hard to beat tires that would have been 12, 15 laps newer. It would have been hard to hold on, but I would have given it a good shot,
Yeah.
When everyone had left Mexico with such a good experience, one of the only complaints from the drivers was that the race was too long. It was just simply too long. And then you come to Chicago and they had shortened the race. And I thought that it was lovely. So how is that compared to the street courses that you would do in your former life versus now? And do you feel that shorter is better? I mean, it's normally better even for the viewing audience, right? They try to get right to the punch and try to get to the checkered flag. How do you feel about the length of the races over here?
I think NASCAR races just generally very long anyway, so I've kind of gotten used to that. But certainly Mexico felt forever those last 30 laps.
Really, yeah.
They needed to go quicker, but I like the length of the races. Sort of 2.5, 3 hours is really good. But yeah, I think doing an extra 25 laps at Chicago and getting to 100, that probably would have been excessive. So I think the length of the race was really good.
36-year-old rookie in the NASCAR Cup Series, which is kind of unusual, but for good reason. We love to see the story that allowed us this timeline. Have you given any thought to how long you want to race and when it would be time to step away, or do you just want to keep winning and until that goes away, maybe then you'll reevaluate?
I think I'll keep racing for as long as I can drive cars, like there's guys like John Bell in Australia or Jim Richards, they raced till they were sort of mid-60s, 70s, John Bell's still racing. So, yeah, I want to keep racing forever. I have unfinished business, I guess, in rally. I want to do more rally racing. And I want to do the Nürburgring 24-hour. So those are on my list. But yeah, I can see myself in NASCAR for, I don't know, I really enjoy myself here, and I can see myself doing this for a lot more years. And I think there's guys in NASCAR that make it to mid-40s still competitive, and, I don't feel old. So I can do this as long as I need.
What about like when you have a young punk like Will Brown come over here? did you feel like, yeah, I'm glad that he didn't finish that race because I don't need somebody else coming over and grabbing that low hanging fruit that I have? How do you feel about, well, I'm assuming that you have a relationship with that young man,
Yeah.
right? So is it one of those things where you kind of say, keep with this, because you had the immediate success, he didn't have the immediate success, and I know he's run over here before.
Well, he replaced me actually in the
Yes.
ride I left in Australia. So he came over and he brought my old engineer or crew chief with him, Andrew Edwards, and yeah, I miss seeing those guys. It was a great team racing with them, and yeah. But I'd love to see more people come over and have success, But it's a hard sport to break into. Everyone here is really, really good, and it's hard to raise money for from that side of the world with the currency difference, as well. So.
Right.
But yeah, I'd love to see more come over.
Seems like you had a big hand in that. It seems like each year we do this race, more and more come over.
Yep.
I know on the Xfinity level we had another driver as
Perkins.
well, Perkins, yes. Which, by the way, I feel like when they interviewed him on the big screen, he sounded identical to you, and I mean that with no disrespect, but I had to do a double take to make sure that wasn't Shane on the big screen there.
Yeah, it's hard to because everyone sees how well I've gone, especially on road courses. It's hard, I guess, for people to keep their expectations in check. But I think Jack did a brilliant job, and he ran top 5. I think he qualified, was really good, and then he got taken out by someone. But yeah, I think he's doing another race or two to end the year, and yeah, I think he could be really good at it. He's an older guy like me, and I think he'd be good.
One of the things that I thought was interesting was when we first had you in studio a couple of years ago, following your initial success here in Chicago. You were kind of still making sense of your surroundings and transitioning into life in the United States. What has it been like now? Do you feel more comfortable? And I guess, does the city of Chicago have a more important place to you now, given your multiple wins here?
Yeah, I like that place. I have special memories of forever. I still don't like cities, but I come there and you get to the track, you walk in those gates, and you get that pretty cool feeling about it. And I guess I'll have even more every time I go back there now. But yeah, I'm loving it here. I love every place we sort of travel to, getting to see other places, and yeah, it's been a fun transition.
It sounds like this Chicago street race that we saw this year might be the last. What would your position on that be? Should this be the final one? And where else would you like to see NASCAR go in terms of street courses?
Yeah, I heard it was 50-50 to return. I'm obviously biased. I'd love for it to go back. It's a great race. I felt like this year was even better with the vibe around the place, better weather, and I think they can build on that. But if they don't, whether it's San Diego, wherever they're going, I've never been there. That'd be cool to go race there, and new places are always fun. So I'm pretty sure, with the experience they've learned at Chicago, they'll keep making new places better.
Can you do us a favor then before we wrap up? As we're going into Sonoma, can you give us an idea of what the fans can expect from the racing in Sonoma from all of your scouting?
Yeah, so I've kind of studied it a little bit. I've never raced there before in Cup.
Yeah, you've won an Xfinity, yes.
Yeah, I've done Xfinity, but the Cup race looks crazy. Like last year, I think half of it was under yellow from crashes and restarts and stuff. So yeah, or it could run green for most of it. Who knows? It looks like a crazy racing track. So yeah, qualifying will be important. It looks important to be up front in the clean air, out of all the drama. So hopefully we can qualify well and stay out of all that.
All right, well, this is Shane Van Gisbergen. I'm reluctantly a fan of this guy, but I just don't know what his fucking final plan is, Spider. Honestly, I won't let him near my wife. I think he's going to steal all our women. Shane.
I won't do that. I bought one with me.
That was a historic performance. It was very, very fun to watch. We wish you all the best of luck in the rest of the season, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Shane.
All right, so that was Shane Van Gisbergen. Spider, I want to hate the guy. I just can't hate the guy because he's that fucking nice. What's your take off of this one?
Yeah, no, I love him. I know, obviously, I got to play devil's advocate. You're a hater. I'm a lover. But I think what he's done in just the short time he's been in NASCAR has been awesome. Not only winning and bringing a new kind of market that's paying attention to what's happening in the States with NASCAR is awesome. But as outlined in our interview, there's been several other guys that come in and now try their hand at NASCAR, which I think is good. So overall, great to have Shane on the show. We've had him on before, but You kind of have to tip your cap, not only winning on Saturday, but also Sunday. And I feel like sky's the limit with this guy when it comes to road courses or street courses or kind of any non-oval offering that NASCAR wants to throw at these drivers. So he's got a fan in me. I'm going to continue to root for him, and I think he's got a good shot to go back-to-back here at Sonoma.
I wonder what he's like if he's all drunk. He seems like
Did
one
you
of those
see-
guys totally different, like when he's all bombed.
You're going to hate this, Large. There's been pictures circulating on Twitter of him with like full head of hair.
Oh, really?
And I feel like if SVG had hair, I can't imagine how much more you'd even be of a hater.
I hate that guy. But even like when he comes on, he's like, yeah, no, I remember you're the guy who says you hate me. Like he's just a nice fucking chap or lad or whatever they call him down there where they film The Hobbit. All right, let's talk about Sonoma. Still no trucks this week, but Xfinity has the Pit Boss Food Max 250 on Saturday at 4:30 on the CW. Riley Herbst will be in the 19 for JGR, and SVG will be in the 9 for Junior Motorsports. So he's pulling double duty again this weekend, so watch out. And then Sunday we have the Toyota Save More 350 starting at 3:30 p.m. Catch all the action on TNT or feel the thrill in person. Secure your NASCAR seat today at NASCAR.com and feel the excitement. Suarez had his first ever Cup Series win here in 2022. We were there. Kyle Larson won here last year. It was his second win at Sonoma. And Shane has also won here last year in Xfinity. So anything can happen. Let's make some picks right now and pick some winners. Picking the tires. Alrighty, folks, this is insane. For the first time ever, we got a full-blown all-women's boxing mega event going down in New York City. 2 title fights in the same night. Let's go. And if you're like me and love the action, DraftKings Sportsbook is where it's at. We're talking Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano Part 3, the trilogy fight. Absolute legends. Katie's putting her super lightweight belt on the line, and you know Serrano's bringing the heat. But don't sleep on the co-main. Alicia the Bomb Baumgartner, explosive power, is taking on the undefeated WBA interim champ, Jennifer Miranda. This one's going to be fireworks. If you never bet with DraftKings, it's super simple. Just pick who you think's going to win. That's it. It's easy. And check this out. If you're new to DraftKings, throw down $5 and boom, you get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's wild. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and use promo code Rubbin. That's code Rubbin for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Alrighty, boys. Who's got the winners this week?
I do.
Oh, you do? You got
I
him,
do.
Spider?
Yep.
No, I'm going before Spider.
No,
Whoa.
I'm going to start.
Oh, okay.
And it starts with the guy.
Yeah, you can go.
It's going to be SVG. He's plus 130. I'm going to take him. He's going to be my only outright winner this week. I think from what we saw, Mexico, Chicago, either Xfinity or Cup, SVG seems to be class of the field. He's a cut above the rest of these guys. For that reason, I'm taking SVG. He is plus 130, which is always kind of uncomfy, but I think I've seen enough from him to say, he's the real deal, and I expect him to win here. The other plays I've got 2 top 5s for you, and both I think are pretty fair prices. I'm taking McDowell, who's plus 150, and he had a great showing at Chicago Street Race until he didn't. Unfortunately, his car didn't hold up, but if you look at his track history here in the last 3 races, he's got 2 top 5s. I'm taking him for a top 5 plus 150. I think he's going to be running well. The other one I'm intrigued by is Chris Buescher, who has an average finish of third here across 3 races. He's finished in the top 5 all 3 times, and he is plus 190 for a top 5. So I got SVG plus 130 to win, McDowell plus 150 for a top 5, Buescher plus 190 for a top 5, and I'm also going to take all of the underdogs in the in-season tournament matchup.
Parlay together or separate?
Separate. But yeah, so those are my picks for this weekend. I expect SVG to have another masterclass. That's what I got. What do you guys think? Where's your head at?
The reason I want to go before you is because I know we both use driver averages, and I also have Chris Buescher top 5 and Michael McDowell top 5. I think if you look
ridiculous. If
you look at the stats, it's hard not to take
fucking
those
people. It's terrible.
It's hard not to take that pick when you look at the stats of the last 3 races.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have 2 different ones. I got Kyle Busch winning. I think he's getting it soon. Like I said, maybe here. and that's plus 2,200. And I also have Chase Elliott winning at plus 1,400. Those are my picks.
Chase, good pick. I like Chase.
Thank you.
I got a 3-pick parlay. Michael
Ooh.
McDowell, top 10. Kyle Larson, top 10. Chris Buescher, top 10. It plays plus 200. It's not a lot to pay, but I think it's a good bet. You
Who
know
was
what I
the
mean?
first name?
Michael McDowell, Kyle Larson, and Chris Buescher, all top 10s. 3-leg parlay, paying plus 200. I also took Denny Hamlin to win. So those are my only bets right now. So kind of familiar names, but there you go. And then Moon, how about you?
I like Ryan Preece, top 10. I like Bubba, top 10. He's not historically the greatest on road courses, but he's made a lot of improvement over the last couple of seasons. And then Michael McDowell, I think he's going to be hungry. Obviously, they've got a lot of road course speed in that car. He's a phenomenal road course racer. And I think if his throttle doesn't hang or whatever happened to him at Chicago this weekend, I think he's got a good chance at winning. So he's my only outright winner that I'm going to pick.
Cool. All right. So the table is set to head to Sonoma this weekend. We will not be in attendance, but we will be here next week on Rubbin is Racing. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Peace.